A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. With these very apt words, I welcome you to Back to School 2022, Episode 3, session with Ms. SUBHECHHA CHATTERJI, an alumnus for the batch of 2013. Back to School is a job shadowing initiative taken up by our school for the basic holistic development of our students through experiential learning. Students learn to reflect and conceptualize independently through an active interaction with their environment. As a part of this venture, we reach out to our ex-students who are now qualified and successful professionals in their chosen fields with expertise and information to share with students from their alma mater using the virtual platform. This helps students to acquire knowledge and information about how to pursue their dream careers or be inspired to set their goals for life. Thank you, SUBHECHHA, for joining us in this session and spending some time and sharing your journey with them. This will inspire them to cope with the current situation and make them aware of the challenges ahead. We are happy and proud to have you amongst us as a guest speaker for this session and have much to learn and imbibe from you. Now I hand over the proceedings to Shomodeepa for an introduction on our most esteemed guest. Over to you, Shomodeepa.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good afternoon to everyone present here. It's an honored privilege to have amongst us Ms. SUBHECHHA CHATTERJI, an alumnus of the batch of 2013. Ms. Chatterjee completed her BSc Honours in Microbiology from Lady Brabourne College, Calcutta University, and then she took the road not taken, as she refers to it, by doing the Young India Fellowship at the Ashoka University. On completion of her fellowship, she joined Open House, which is an edtech startup, and Parent Circle in the corporate social responsibility wing of the Ramco Group, which is an Indian mass circulation monthly magazine that features information on parenting and child development geared to help parents. Currently, she's pursuing her master's in education in learning, design, innovation, and technology at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Harvard University, Massachusetts. Her primary interests lie in children's educational media and UX research, particularly for designing learning curricula and tools. She started a bilingual storytelling and family engagement podcast on Spotify in November 2021 for children aged 6 to 10. She's also the co-founder of a venture, Sathi, incubated by Harvard Innovations Lab, that is working towards providing out-of-school learning solutions to K-8 children in rural Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Currently, she is also in the roster of WASH, that is Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Consultants for UNICEF's India office. All present here, please join me in welcoming back to MBWA, Ms. SUBHECHHA CHATTERJI.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. And I feel so honored and privileged to be back to school. I think it's more like homecoming rather than just back to school, because I've literally grown up here for 13 years of my life. So thank you so much to all my teachers and my juniors and all the supporting staff who are there who make all of this possible. So thank you so much. Should I present my screen and start, or should I be waiting for anything, teacher?
No, I think you can start sharing screen.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Is my screen visible? Like
yes,
Yes,
it
yes.
is. It is.
Yes.
It is.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I say that the journey is yours to make, because mine was such. It was not something which was like something that was very pre-planned from the word go. While I was your age, I never thought in my grade 12 that I will be pursuing my master's in education or going into the whole behind the scenes of education. And I say behind the scenes because I'm not into the in the forefront, like teaching, but I'm trying to make probably a little difference in the lives of learners and the other stakeholders like teachers and parents involved in the lives of learners and who play the most important role in the lives of learners. So that's where I would like to begin with. And before I jump into like everything about how the journey has been and what have been my takeaways, and if that can be of any use to you, I would just like you to go to Menti. I think you've used Menti, and you could either scan the QR code, or you could like go to the web platform and type this code, whatever works for you. And there's a little word cloud that I would like you to do, like basically about what learning means to you. And I'll just once open the page with the word cloud. So it would be nice if you can do multiple entries. So yeah. It could be an emotion, a feeling. It could be like whatever you associate with learning. It could be a person, a place, like anything. Wow. I'll wait for another 10 seconds or so, and then understanding seems to be like leading the way with being a key to learning. And I think that's so important. And enlightenment, curiosity. I think curiosity is something very important, particularly in what I am doing, because unless we have the curiosity, we cannot innovate anything new. And that's so important in one's learning journey. So yeah, social skills, discovering the unknown. I really like that phrase. It is all about discovering the unknown, because if you know everything, you stop learning. So it's, of course, discovering the unknown. So yes, thank you so much. And I will come back to this as to why I feel, because for a lot of us, learning usually seems to be very restricted to just the four walls of your school or home to an extent. And that's it. Like we feel that these are primarily the two places that we learn for a lot of us. But actually, as I pursue the field of education, I've just come to realize that learning can happen at any point and even from the most unexpected places, and you never know where that learning comes of use. So yeah, so getting back to all the lovely ideas that you've written, I shall get back to the presentation and just so yes, my learning journey, as I said, started from Mahadev Birla Girls Higher Secondary School. Now it is MBWA, and it was a beautiful 13 years of my life, because it was life changing for me in terms of just growing through those years, understanding my limitations, knowing where my strengths are, and just growing up in that environment where every day I was nurtured and as a child, and just being allowed to be my free self. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me from school. And I moved on to do my master's in microbiology at Lady Brabourne. I really loved the biological sciences, and I still do, but I think I like education more. So that's why I took up what I'm pursuing at this point of time. Then I went on to do the Young India Fellowship. It was again a tough call, because I thought I would go and take the conventional route of doing my MSc or an integrated PhD in allied sciences related to microbiology, but it was something, I think it was more of a thing that I really want to take the plunge and move into something different, because I wanted to like be on ground and take action. That was something that I got inspired to do while I was doing my undergrad studies. So I think that's what led me to do that. And during the fellowship, I got really interested, like further interested in the whole field of education, and, you know, the stakeholder and the child's learning environment really excited me at that time. So I moved on to work into organizations, first Parent Circle and then Open House. Again, it was all about trying to make a difference in the lives of learners in our own small ways, but just taking those tiny strides. And at this point of time, I am at the GSC, which is the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I'm trying and like literally exploring different ways in which we can make a difference in the lives of learners. And it's been an exciting journey because it's not only people who come from diverse areas from around the world, but it's also about, it's so good to hear the different stories that people have in their countries. You have somebody from Africa who talks about how inequitable education is there. You have somebody from USA who says that it's not all same across the country, because with such a huge country, it's so different to have the same kind of education across. So it's just a really nice melting pot of different cultures, experiences, people. And I think that has been one of my biggest learning. In classroom learning has been great, but as I say, learning happens from beyond those classroom walls or your home. It's only when you mix with these literally diverse pool of people, you realize that you literally know nothing, and there's so much to learn from all around you. So yeah, and so just getting back to like some rewind and where I started. So as I said, I had science with biology in my +2, and these were some of the options that lay ahead of me. Of course, I was one of those who took medicine, like who thought I would be a doctor, and I will change the world by being a doctor. But I also was really interested in the whole like the research part of biological sciences, and eventually I led to I thought that maybe doing microbiology would be a better option, and I took I did my BSc in microbiology at Lady Bribon, as Shomadeepa said. So that was something that it was more in the flow. Like I wanted to do biological sciences, and I felt that okay, microbiology was good. It was not that I was thinking, oh, I want to do my PhD and things like that. It was more of one step at a time and not very long-term thinking. But I really enjoyed what I was doing. And I think my undergrad experience as a whole was really beautiful. And I say this because at this point of time in grade 12, you are in that juncture where you're like, oh, I have to get through this place, and I have to get, you have your dream colleges, you have your aspirations. And it's just that, or like, it's important to always have a plan B, because honestly, you really don't know if your plan A might or might not work despite your 100% efforts. So just have a plan B and be, if not equally passionate about it, at least have some amount of love for it. Because if your plan B goes on to become your primary area of work or study, it's important to love what you do. So just think of a plan B, which is something you really like. And for me, it was not just microbiology. I really liked bio, but for me, the whole idea of having the classroom come alive in the laboratory was something I really enjoyed. So that's some place where I realized that it's more about having the real like theory come into practice. And that's where I feel anything, it doesn't have to be biology, any form of learning where it is more hands-on, more experiential, more you in it, and less of things that are like you, it's not something that you're being instructed to do, but something that you do out of your own accord. I think that was one of my biggest learnings while doing microbiology, that the theory replicates itself in the lab. And that was something very interesting to me. Something that I always say is that start early on connecting with people, because now you have LinkedIn. While I was doing, LinkedIn was taking its baby steps. It was in its beta phase that we call in product development. It was just developing, but it was a really great platform, but we were not aware of it. Connect with as many people as you can. They might not, like, you might be not doing everything that they are telling you, but it's always nice to talk to people who have had some experience more than you, because people are, you will not believe, people are so interested to help. Like anytime a junior reaches out, or we reach out to our seniors or people in the professional arena, it is so exciting to see how they are equally excited to help you out. And also, like, beyond what you are doing in your school or in your undergrad in terms of your academic studies, what you also, I would suggest always, because we always talk about building your resume, building your CV, do things that make you happy, but also add value to your journey. So like what I personally did was I really like foreign languages. Like I was like, oh, do I want to go for Spanish or do I want to go for French? So I went on to learn French, and I think that really helped me, because even at the even at the fellowship, or even at Harvard, when I'm talking to people who are from a different culture, especially people from Canada, and I know a little bit of French in which I can speak, you strike a personal chord with them, because then they feel that, oh, you learned something which is theirs. So it becomes very relatable. And again, this is also that time which I had started back in Interact Club with Mrs. Deroy, as like Little Angels was the teaching program, but it was also like I took a major step by being a ed support teacher at Make a Difference all throughout my undergrad experience. So yeah, and some of my learnings from Make a Difference, and the biggest was I tried to create like these lesson plans and teach the children. And this whole concept of windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors is something that I resonate with a lot. So the whole term of windows and mirrors was given by Emily Stiles. She's an educator, and sliding glass doors was added by Rudine Bishop. She's a multicultural educator. So she follows different cultures and how education works in different cultures. And and that's something I didn't know this term existed, but this learning that we have to make learning contextual was something I learned while I was teaching. And it's only here that I learned this term. Basically, you have to provide a learning experience, should provide windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors to children or any learner. The window is basically your opportunity to open it and explore. So you see the world outside of where you are. Mirrors is where you can see yourself in what you are learning. It has to be relatable to you. You cannot learn something which is not at all associated with your regular life, or you don't know about it all. And it should also be like a sliding glass door, which you can open and enter. So it gives you an opportunity to open, like have the agency to explore something by literally opening it yourself and being a part of it. So it has to embrace you as well. So any learning experience should at least have one or more of these, so that a child literally feels welcome and belonged in the learning environment. And it also made me realize that we were very lucky to have come to like school, like where you are studying, or go to colleges which give you excellent education. But there are so many around us who are victims of inequitable practices, especially young girls. So, and that's also something that inspired me to work for Sathi. That's a venture that we've started at Howard Innovations Lab. It is more like we provide out of school support to marginalized children in rural Bihar. And so this was the time when I was like, okay, microbiology or something else, like, what to do for my master's. And then I was like, yeah, it was literally like two roads. I had to choose one. And something that I would like to mention here is that my family was very supportive. Like there were people who were like, oh, do you think doing something like the fellowship would be of any value to you? And Ashoka University was a relatively new university. But I was like, yes, I want to do something which is challenging. And it's okay, it's just 1 year and I can take this plunge. There were other options for me in terms of an MSc or an integrated PhD, but I think the fellowship literally enticed me, if I have to say. There were 5,000 applications in our batch, and it was a process which had a written round, and then you had telephonic interviews, group discussions, an interview with like a panel of 3. And to be honest, that taught me a lot. And that was my first real interview in terms of talking to people about what I'm really passionate about. And that is what set me thinking, what is it that I am really passionate about? And this is something I ask you, because just ask yourself, are you really passionate about what you're doing? Or is it more that you are doing because XYZ is doing, or because I feel that looks like a very glamorous career that I want to follow? So just like, when you actually quizzed in front of 3 people, that why are you passionate about, what change will you bring by being a part of something? I think it really makes you think deep as to what am I really passionate about? Like, what is it that really like pulls me towards itself? And that's when I realized I don't think I said education was what I'm passionate about, because I think I was still figuring it out. But I definitely said that I want to do something where I can bring about some change in the lives of people. And for me, it was mostly all about social change. Like, what can I do to bring about like some amount of social change? It could be 2 people, but just bringing about that change is what I think I was constantly thinking about. So then yeah, it was the fellowship that happened. And as I said, it turned out to be a life-altering experience for me. That's me on the right. I'm getting my degree from Dr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee. He is still the chancellor at Ashoka University. And yeah, my learnings were very different, and especially because it was very humanities oriented, having coming from a science background. It was something that was very different for me, and I really enjoyed it. And you are all students of humanities, mostly, I believe, but I'm telling you, the way it was taught and the curriculum was so good. Like, in terms of, you again, as I said, it was more hands-on, and so the learner in me was trying to understand how learning can be so different. Like, because if somebody tells you behavioral sciences or psychology, you are like, okay, I'll learn a lot of theory and I'll be able to try some things practically. But what happened for me was, like, I was literally going to rural Haryana, literally with my head covered. It was so dusty. The Delhi heat is bad. And I was actually talking to people, going door to door and going to these women and knowing how their lifestyle is, how are the norms, the patriarchal norms that exist and things like that. So that was real hands-on learning, and that reiterates my belief that learning cannot be like very siloed, and you cannot have learning just within the four walls of your classroom or within the four walls of your home. It has to be, if you're doing if it, it has to be with the people, it has to be with the environment in which you are in. And similarly, like, I was exploring different things. I was trying to do like these real hands-on things, and we were trying to create prototypes are basically things that you create before you build a product which is of use to people. So you're trying to do, it's more like an example, and you see whether people are able to use it or not. So we were trying to build prototypes as well for different organizations. We were trying to improve sanitation in the hospitals and things like that. And that's when I personally realized that it's all about doing things on the ground, because I can write and say, oh, we should be doing this, but it's only when you have to do it, you realize it's a very painstakingly long journey. And there will be, so if you're trying something new, of 100 people, 98 people will say this is absolutely not working out, this is not going to be a successful endeavor. Only two people might show some belief in you, and so your biggest cheerleader is you. So you have to believe that if this is what I'm doing and this is what will work, let me take a plunge. It might fail, but it doesn't really matter. You just go ahead and do it. And always, I believe you should have a core group of people who are always there to support you in that journey, like who have the same beliefs as you in yourself. So yeah, the fellowship happened, and I moved on to, like, yes, and at the fellowship I was teaching the support staff. So these were my students whom I used to teach English and science almost like 3 times a week. And I would also send worksheets across for their children in Hindi. I would literally like sit down and make worksheets and send it. And they literally, again, it was literally a lot of reiteration that it's not only the children who matter, but also the stakeholders involved in the child's learning journey. So even if you are thinking of a career in education or allied fields, remember that you need not always be like student facing, or you need not be a teacher, but you can also do a lot of things behind the scenes to support teachers, to support parents or learners in different ways. And that's something that I started developing a keen interest in. So and as I said, that I got interested in the whole idea of supporting parents, because that was a journey that I was getting a view of by teaching these parents who were like these non-teaching staff who were actually, most of them were parents. So then I was working, and we created a community of parents from across the country about different, and particularly parents of children with behavioral issues, because these children have different learning needs. So only when you know the learning needs of different children do you realize that that every child learns differently. In fact, all of you learn differently. No two people learn the same way, and that's something which is a proven thing, that studies say that no two people learn in the same way. So it's very important to make learning adapt to, like, when you're teaching, or when anybody you're making something to support a learner, it has to adapt to the learner. It has to make the learner feel a part of the learning process, and that can only happen when the stakeholders feel that they are empowered enough to help the learner. And here, stakeholders that I was working with were parents. So it was a nice journey, but also being very young, it takes a lot of time for you to prove yourself that who is this like 22-year-old who thinks that they can help us out. So I think that was really important, that you establish the fact that okay, I might be 22, but I also think of 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 the whole area of education in a way where I feel that you as parents can add a lot of value. And it was very difficult to actually we had a lot of senior psychologists and educators in our team, but even then, to make parents and teachers believe, a lot of teachers that we were working with and parents said, you know what, it's not just the marks or the grades, but it's more about your child's learning journey, and how you can partner with your child in that journey was really, really important. So that is something that I was learning. And again, there is a lot that you learn when you're working with people of different age groups, bosses who are like in their 40s and 50s, who feel that these young 20 something young girls cannot do anything, or that listening to them is not the best idea because they lack the experience. So I think believing in yourself and being very convinced with what you are doing, and then making that very clear with that gumption on your face that yes, you know what, I think this is right, and I think, of course, I'm open to feedback, but I also think that this is something that might make a difference, so can we please try, and be convincing enough to do that. I think that is really important. So that was one of my biggest learning while I started my first job at 22. And I moved on. This was more of a very ed tech startup. It was a very calm, cool workspace where I was working with after school teachers, because they are a very unorganized sector. So, and again, parent engagement as a piece is very close to my heart. So we were working with parents of children, and the teachers also were always like, parents just come to us either to pay the fee or to ask, how is my child doing? And if the child has fared badly in the school exams, to say, how can they improve their results? So we thought that why not have the parents come together and give them a glimpse of their child beyond their grades. And so we started working on this whole parent engagement piece. It was also the pandemic when I had just started this job. So just before the pandemic. So there was a lot of, particularly among high school students, this mental health and well-being was affected, because for them to switch off from school and then come to this whole virtual world was y'all are all masters now in this whole virtual world, but at that time it was very difficult. So this whole idea of student well-being is something that we were trying to figure out, and it was more like a mentorship support that we set up, and we came up, like we had students who would come up and share really, where some would share extremely interesting stories about how they're trying to cope with the pandemic, while some would have a really difficult time. And that's, again, like, you realize that if you are in the field of education, it's not just making learning contextual, it's not just about what they are learning academically, but there's so much more to a student's life that has to be right for them to be able to learn what they have to learn. So it was more about bolstering them with some support, that you have to, we are there for you, and for students to, and it's not always that you will have somebody, so it's for you to be able to find resources that will support you. And that's something that I suggest, that when if you are going through, even in your 12th grades, that you are going through this phase of boards and what does life look like ahead, and you have this anxiety, and it's very natural because it's pretty uncertain as to how life looks like ahead 5 months hence. So create your own set of resources and people who give you that support and who are your pillars of strength. So if it's your family, if it's your friends, great. If it's reading something or listening to something that makes you happy, go ahead and do that. But have your system of support ready, because without that, sometimes even the best of learners falter, because unless you believe in yourself and you have that faith in yourself, it becomes very difficult to take charge of the situation and literally perform at your best. So yeah, I think that support is extremely important. And that's something I realized while working with these children, that we were trying to make learning tools, but before we make learning tools and make learning an out of the world experience, it's important to understand the learner. So yeah, and these were some of the things that I learned. And one of my biggest takeaways, as the picture says, and it's something that, again, I request you to do, is that always try to see the big picture. because sometimes we are so bothered about just seeing a part of the problem, and we are like, oh, we'll come and we'll have the best solution in the world and to solve that. But the problem is that we are seeing only a part of the problem. It's like that elephant and you touch every part and you're like, oh, it's a tree, it's a snake when you touch the trunk, but you don't realize it's actually an elephant when you are viewing it from a distance. And that's something that I see even while I'm developing curricula as a learner, for learners, as an educator, because unless you understand the various issues that are there in their lives, you will never be able to take a call on what works best for them. So I think it's always important to zoom out and see the big picture rather than be like, oh, I know this is the problem and here is my magic wand and this is how it's resolved. That's not how things work. In the short run, it might work and solve. It's more like a band-aid, but it's not a permanent solution for any, particularly a learning problem, because learning problems are actually very, very, they are very deep, and they need for you to have like multiple perspectives and multiple things working in your head that, okay, you know what, this is not right. Okay, there's another part to it which is not right. So let me try fixing that. And so then you realize there are so many problems that are leading to a bigger problem, learning problem. So it's really important that you distance yourself from the problem and see what are the multiple problems that are making something difficult for a learner. Or even if it's not learning, it could be any other problem in your workspace or in your academic journey that you're facing. So just zooming out and seeing the big picture, I think, has been one of my biggest learning, because when I joined work, I was more bothered about, oh, there's a problem here, let me fix that. And then I would realize there's another bigger problem that I hadn't fixed. So then what do I do? Do I unfix this and go back to that? So it's better that I take my time to like come out and see what the bigger problem is. So that's something that I learned as I was working. And yeah, not giving up on what you, and this is something I say also because extracurricular activities for grad school admissions is extremely important. They really want to know you beyond your grades and your marks and all the accolades that you have won academically. I continued writing. I still write for like magazines and blog posts. I continued with my practice of Kathak, which I've been learning for almost 20 years now, since the age of 6. I'm still working as a wash consultant with UNICEF India office, which is water sanitation and hygiene. And I also mentor young children under Gyan Angels, which is a psychology startup. So, and as I say, that inspiration comes from a lot of places. And honestly, when you put this in your CVs or resumes that you build for your applications for your higher studies, it is so important to be able to like realize that extracurricular activities is something they want to know. They want to know what you have done beyond just reading and learning and just putting that out on your papers. They know you are a good student, but what is it that you bring additionally, so that they know you beyond the person who is someone who has got an A grade or things like that. So just show a version, be a version of yourself where it's like, okay, I have done this academically, but I also do this additionally, because that really gives a perspective about the person that you are. You could be interested in chess, great, just put that, because and continue doing that, because your passion reflects when you're talking to people. So it's really important that you make sure that you have some extracurricular activity that you are involved in. Because coming to the next part, actually, that when I talk grad school, and it could be SAT for you, I say GRE because this is for your master's or PhD, but I say even for SAT, if you give, which is the exam for your undergraduate studies outside of India in the US, a compelling resume, and by a compelling resume, I mean start with action words, very convincing action words. Winner of XYZ doesn't make sense to them. They don't care whether you are a winner of whatever. But if you say created something to do something for someone, that works. When you use action words like designed a curriculum for XYZ, that works. They are like, okay, so this person has taken the initiative to do something. So always use action words in your resume. And as I said, LinkedIn is a very, very useful resource to reach out to people. So an updated LinkedIn profile, and you are old enough to have updated LinkedIn profiles, have a nice short bio where I feel like, oh, wow, I know about this person by reading your bio. LinkedIn has a bio portion in the beginning, much like your Facebook bios, but Facebook bios are more fun and jolly. This is more professional. An SOP is your statement of purpose, and write a story which is real and which is you. They do not want a replica of your resume, but they want you in your story. So write a really compelling, honest SOP. A competitive GRE score, different universities have different GRE score cutoffs and criteria. And because of the pandemic, a lot of that has changed, but it's always good to have a competitive GRE score. And usually GRE scores are valid for 5 years. So you can take it and just sit on it. And if it doesn't go well, you can take it again. It's just that it's an expensive exam. So plan, prepare, and then take your exam. Create your pool of recommenders for your graduate studies, because they are the people that who will actually write compelling recommendations for you for grad school. And it's very important that you have a good recommendation, because they want to hear from people who have taught you, or who have worked, who have supervised you, to know what kind of a person you are. And again, TOEFL is like the English, or you have the IELTS, depends on the university you're applying to. They have their English language requirements, because we come from a non-English language speaking country where English is not the first language. But many universities also give you a waiver on the English language requirement. So that's something that depends on your university. But these are, I think, some of the very important things that you should have along with your extracurricular activities, because they really focus a lot on voluntary work, on other things that you have done in life. So I tried to do some of it for my grad school applications, and here I am. I'm trying to this whole world. I never thought learning could happen informally, but I'm trying to work through multiple media approaches that help children learn. And by media, I mean any form of media. It could be visual media, it could be audio, it could be audio visual, and it need not just be YouTube series. So I also started a podcast, which is basically a storytelling podcast, but also has family engagement activities. And that comes from my interest in bilingual learning in children. So that is something that I have been doing here. And I've also done education policy and how family and children policy affects educational policies. And as I said, that the stakeholder is so important in a child's learning journey, the immediate stakeholders, which are the family or the teacher. So it just has helped me understand the role of family and family policies and how it affects the life of a learner. And I'm also I've been working actually on evaluation plans. And basically it is how an organization is faring. If I'm creating a product, what is the journey of the company been so long? What is, if the company changes its trajectory now, its way of functioning, what is the expected outcome that we are thinking might happen? So it's basically a lot of evaluation and research and interviewing, a lot of qualitative research and quantitative data collection about how organizations function. And I also am just very tiny steps about, we are working with children in Bihar. And because it's incubated by Howard Innovations Labs, it just becomes easy to get a lot of mentors. And again, these are people who tend to become your recommenders later as well. So always find ways to connect with people and make just keep increasing. I don't like to use the word network because I feel it's very impersonal, but just build more connections with people. People say I have a huge network of people. If that's the word you like, great, but it's just building connections and relationships, because you never know which relationship comes of use later. And it's also just, it's nice to know the great work that a lot of people are doing. And yeah, going ahead, I still have a good chunk of my next semester left. So I am trying to get more into this whole formative research, basically not understanding whether a product is a pass or a fail at the end of building the product, that's formative evaluation. But rather than taking in between every interval, I'm trying to understand a product, see whether it's working or not. If it's not working, it's a fail, then I rework on the product. It's more like a dynamic iterative process. I'm also going to learn about building educational tools, primarily using programming, because that's something I have no clue of. I am not a computer science student, so I don't know much of programming. I want to continue with the podcast that I had started, and that's a snippet of the snapshot of the podcast that I had done, the Eidgah Retold one. And I say children's educational media because Sesame Street is the one in USA. In India, it is Gully Gully Sim Sim, and they have an excellent curriculum of helping children learn different things, but in a very fun way using Muppets. Muppets are basically puppets, but they have given the name Muppets to them, and they have different characters which are very contextual to the country that they're working in. So that's something I really want to explore, and I want to go into the whole field of UX research, product development, and how I can make like learning tools more adhere to the learner's needs, instead of it being like a one size fits all approach. Because I'm really passionate about two things, I feel. One is having the stakeholder involvement in the child's learning journey, and I'm more interested in young learners than adult learners. And also the other is that how can children really benefit from educational media? So yeah, that's primarily what I have been doing and I wish to do. And yeah, this is just a glimpse of where it all started. This was cool. These uniforms don't exist anymore. But yeah, and this is where I am now. As I said, at Howard, it's been a diverse group of people and a lot of new learnings, a lot of new experiences. And I sometimes feel I'm in Wonderland, but I think it's really a great experience. And yes, that's mostly from it. And this is something I had written for some of my teachers very many years ago. I don't recollect the original poem, but I try to recollect bits of it. And this is actually, I'm indebted to MBG for all that it has been to me in all these years. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shubhecha. And I remember the poem because the poem that you had given me, okay, before leaving school, and the poem is still there with me, okay, and have pasted in front of me on the soft board, and remember, and keeps on, inspiring me as a teacher. And I feel so thankful that I had taught you, okay, when you were in class 11 and 12. So that poem is still there. So once I'm there in school, I might share it with you students. Thank you for such.
I have the poem.
Yeah,
I have a poem. You can
yeah.
mention it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shubhecha. It was such an enriching session for, I think, teachers also, for us also, isn't it? So much to learn from you. So now, students, if you have questions, okay, you can please ask her. Yes, Shostika. Yes, whoever raise your hand, please. Yeah, Shostika, please.
Hi, ma'am. You switched from microbiology to education for your master's. So I was just wondering, what was it that motivated you to pursue a completely different course altogether after your graduation?
Thank you, Swastika, for your question. As I said, that while I was doing my microbiology undergraduate studies, I was also teaching at Make a Difference. And like I was teaching at Make a Difference for 3 years, like since my first year till my third year. And that's where I realized that I like bio, but I think the whole world of teaching and education, because I was doing a lot of non-teaching work as well. I was doing a lot of curriculum writing, lesson planning, different ways of engaging children. And remember, these were children. I was teaching at the Calcutta Muslim Orphanage for Girls, which is like very close to school. And they were all mostly abandoned children. And I think that really got me interested as to what goes behind the whole act of teaching, like the whole process of teaching. And I really got excited to, try that and see how I could get into that particular field. And to be honest, YIF, the Young India Fellowship, was like a stepping stone in that journey. So I think I was okay leaving microbiology because I think I was more passionate about education than bio.
Thank you, Shubhecha. I think Shomdatta also wants to ask a question. Yes, over to you, Shomdatta.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I think like enriching would be a very, I don't know, a very common or a very small word to describe like my experience, because I have been very, very intrigued and very, very inspired by your session. Intrigued why? Because I think your session is about educating yourself about the field of education, which I think is something very, very unique. And my question to you would be that you have been saying, I think more than once in your session, that it is very, very important for us to look at a problem from different perspectives and how the various stakeholders need to be involved in the solution. So how difficult was it for you to develop that multidimensional perspective, especially when you're out there doing fieldwork?
Thank you so much for your question, Shamdata. That's a very good question. I think the one of the biggest learnings for me was that even before I started like my professional journey, while I was at the YF, as I said, I was doing a lot of field work. It was like, so I'll give you an example. We would go from door to door in this village called Asawarpur in near Sonipat, and where the Ashoka University is. And we would be like, oh, so this household has a problem. Like most of the households had a problem. And I was working on my paper on the psychology behind infertility in women. So that how are women who are infertile treated in their households and neighborhoods, particularly in rural India. And I was working, and then I realized that it was more for, initially I thought it was more about a biological problem or a biological issue. But then while working, I realized there were so many smaller issues that were there that were contributing. It was like some were young brides and they had multiple miscarriages and they couldn't have children, or some were victims of sexual harassment. Some had family issues and they couldn't have children. And that's where I realized that I had come from such a narrow mindset that, oh, it is such a biological thing. But just realizing that there are multiple issues that contribute to a particular problem was something that was like one of the first major learnings. And also to be in that, and also, you know, assimilating yourself in that culture is so different. It's a very different culture from where we come from. You have to keep your head covered, and as women studying, going to a village in Haryana is not easy. So just understanding that, you know, it's not just one issue that is contributing to a problem, but multiple issues. And I had a supervisor at open house. She's also an alumnus of our school. So she kept telling me that sometimes I would get very puzzled with a particular problem as to why something not working. She would keep telling me all the time that, Shubhecha, zoom out and see the big picture. If one is not working, there will be 5 other things that are working in it. So don't get so embroiled into just one particular issue, because then you're not focusing on the other things that are a problem. So I think that, like, she would constantly, that was a constant feedback for me for 1.5 years that I worked at open house. And because I always found it difficult to come out, zoom out and see the big picture. So I think I consciously try to do that here. So like having somebody give you that feedback also really helped me.
Yes, next, Audrija. Thank you, Shubhecha. Thank you, Shomdatta, for your question. Yes, Audrija, yes, Audrija is also ready with a question. Okay, Audrija, over to you.
Ma'am, you said that your family was your biggest support system while you were exploring various avenues. But for many individuals, that is not the case when they try to go for unconventional choices. So how would you suggest that we deal with such a situation?
Thank you for your question, Adrija. Yes, I think that's such a, I think that's a question very close to my heart, because as I say, it's so important to have your immediate stakeholder in a learner's journey, to have that immediate stakeholder support. And that is your teachers and your family, honestly, or caregivers. People might not have parents or their immediate caregivers. But as you said, that if parents are not like supportive of your journey, how do you convince them? I think it's more about, I feel if you yourself are 100% convinced about what you are choosing, it's your duty to actually make them believe in it and tell them that, okay, like, you know, I feel this is going to work. And the primary thing is that it's for somebody, when you are really convinced, it changes the person's perspective. Sometimes I do understand, particularly for like our Indian mindset, that there is this thing that what will others say, and nobody in the family has ever done something like this. Why do you want to do this? There are conventional routes that are available. But then somewhere you really have to believe in yourself and be like, this is what I want to do, because you're not doing anything wrong. You're just choosing a path which is different from the conventional route. And if people wouldn't do that, newer fields would never be created. So you just have to believe in yourself and be able to tell with a lot of determination on your face that I know what I'm doing, and all I ask for you is to believe in me. Because unless you are convinced, you cannot convince anybody. So if you have even 1% of doubt, then nobody can believe you. So you have to really be convinced yourself.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Next, Shomodipa. Shomodipa wants to ask a question.
Ma'am, I'm quite an enthusiast of foreign universities, especially the Ivy League universities in Oxford. So like the admission process, it seems very daunting, but if you could share a few more tips as to, the process of resume writing or accessing scholarships and the whole procedure in general, that would be very helpful.
Sure. So like, it is a very daunting process, it's thought, but once you start the process, and having been through it, I realized, post-admission processes are the worst. Like my 5 months after getting through the admission, I realized there's just so much that you have to do that I feel it was a cakewalk to just be applying to these universities. But yes, as you said, the resume is something that when you're applying, I'm also talking mostly for masters, because undergrad is a different thing. You have more, they give you more leeway because you are younger and they don't expect you to have done a lot of things ahead of time. But particularly for your masters, a resume, a very, very compelling resume. And I don't mean it has to have hundreds of accolades and accomplishments, but even if you have 5 things, write about them that you did them for a reason. And that should come out, as I said, use a lot of like real action words. And also you do not need to put your entire life journey in your resume. I think the best way to make a resume is have a long draft of a resume. Like it can run into pages, right? And then see, okay, these are all my accomplishments, or this is all that I have done. Let me now see which are the most important ones for me, and then select them. Have proper headers in your resume. So if you have worked, like when I was applying, I had worked. So I had a work experience, I had an education, I had a part called projects and internships, and then I had the extracurricular things. And I keep saying that because they literally see that part, that, what is it that you've done as voluntary work? What is it that you have done as additional, like a lot of these courses on say Coursera or edX is no more, it's 2U now. So like things like that, Udemy, things like that, they add value to your, you don't know who sees what. Honestly, I might like to see something in a resume while somebody else might like to see something else. And make sure that you make it very real. So do not say reached out to many people. Many is such an ambiguous number. Say I reached out to or impacted, use words like that, impacted 7,000 families, or created a product that helps children with autism and has shown improvement in X% of my audience. So use very, very tangible outputs so that people know that you've done real work. And yes, SOP is something that it should not be a replica of your resume. I have got this, I have done this. They do not want to hear that. They really want to know more of your story. And it is more like something that our career services office's director says. She says it should be a situation, an action, and a result. Every para should be a situation, action, and result. So I had a situation. This is the action I took to combat that situation, and this was the result that I got. It could be a failed result, but this is the result that I got. So it always helps to have the situation, action, result approach to every para of your SOP. So I think, yeah, these are some of the things that I think have worked in our favor. So I think they might work for you too.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, Titash would also like to ask a question. Yes, Titash.
My question would be, what are the opportunities that are offered in education management?
Okay, so education management is more of a corporate like route that you would take. And for example, it is more in the organization how would I say that? You're managing organizations rather than actually doing the back end, as I said, of education. So you're not creating curricula, you're not working with teachers, you're not more on the ground, but you are one of those who is in the administration of organizations, educational organizations. So you, and education management is always preferred if you are somebody who is wanting to do something in the field of, in the field of policy, education policy, or running institutions, like in the administration of, like, particularly higher education is where education management is of immense. School education, you do not need an education management degree uh, to be a leader in school education, but particularly higher ed, education management is helpful. Also, you can work as a consultant for a lot of education companies. For example, if it's, say, a publishing house, you can work as a consultant if you have done an education management degree. Also, education management is not a very popular course in itself, but people do take it for certification reasons. And it is definitely a helpful course if you're going for the whole administration and organizational side of education. So, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Shubhecha. So can we take a few more questions? I can see two raised hands. So Samriddhi and Divya, I think. So Samriddhi, your question, then we'll, okay, then the last person to ask will be Divya. Over to you, Samriddhi.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. It was lovely hearing about your experience. So so we all know that in the pandemic, our education has shifted to the virtual platform. So do you think that the digital platform will continue in education, and how can the education system really strike a balance between offline classes and virtual ones to make it more universal, insightful, and sustainable as well?
I think you've used the right words, universal, sustainable. Yeah, because yes, at least how we envision things, or what our professors over here talk about, is that the virtual way of things is going to stay even if the pandemic is over. I don't know when that will be, but even then, the virtual way of things, it just helps you connect remotely with a lot of opportunities which you would have never thought you would be getting access to. So, and particularly edtech as a field depends heavily on the whole virtual side of things. So even if you are coming to school in person, you might use a lot of virtual resources. You might create your own learning community of friends and access a learning resource online. For example, you have things like Kahoot or something that we did, right? The Mentimeter thing. You do not need somebody to guide you, but you might just be a group of peers who are like really excited to try something and you are doing. And also peer learning is most likely to shift virtually, and it's more self-directed learning that is going to happen. Like, you have your teachers who are helping you in school to understand something, but then you're falling back on a lot of virtual tools, edtech virtual tools, to augment your understanding and just be better at what you're doing. And you have a lot of options now. Particularly, I think the pandemic has helped in the development of a lot of those tools. In fact, a lot of what you do in school it can be easily done on a lot of these virtual platforms. Like, you have a platform like Padlet, where you literally have multiple people sharing their notes. It's so interesting. You have Notion. I don't know if a lot of you have used Notion. And I was just having a chat with Mrs. Deroy that day about note making, and I was thinking, we literally make documents on Notion, which is a lot like how note making happens for you in 11th and 12th. Like, if it's 2.3.1 point number, or like 2.3, and then you break it and say 2.3.1. So things like that, I think they add a lot of value in your, and honestly, gradually you will be moving on to writing everything on your laptops, rather than you'll have all virtual documents. Nobody now wants real, like, manual documents, hard copies. So I think it is going to stay, and it is just going to build further.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shubhecha. Actually, we have been working on Notions. Like, my students have taught me that while working on the magazine, and learning about, updating me regarding the progress of work in the magazine. We very effectively use the tool Notions. From last year, we've been using, and it's been really very, very useful. The students have taught us. It's been really, we are empowered by our students. Thanks to them. Okay, Shubhe, now we have Divya. Okay, Shubhe, it's a one more person to ask a question. So that's
Sure.
Divya there, Divya Surana. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Firstly, ma'am, it was really nice listening to all the experiences that you shared. So you said that you've like assisted and been related to a lot of educational programs and open house and things as well. So initially, like a couple of years back, if we say, the only job that was considered to be in the educational sector was being a teacher. But there are various new jobs that are coming up right now in the educational sector that includes educational management and a lot of other things as well. So to say that these are disruptive careers that would probably be mainstream careers in the coming years, or will they stay disruptive itself?
That's a very good question, Divya. Thank you for your question. I don't think education as a field is as glamorous as a lot of other fields. So it might not be like life altering, disruptive, but all I feel is that people are getting more aware, and they realize that that education is not just student facing as a teacher, or but then you have a lot of other things that you can do in the field of education, as I say always, to empower the people who are working on the ground. So your teachers, the parents, the children, all of them. So I think people who are really passionate will continue following it, and people outside of India have been following it for quite some time. In India, it's, I think, just, and sadly, India doesn't have a lot of these Masters of Education programs. We have a few in a lot of these private universities, and the government colleges don't really give you a master's in education the way we have it here. So that's the sad part about not having. So in India, it'll take more time, but here people are really more aware of the whole idea of education, but it's still not one of those very glamorous careers that people would be like, oh, I got into consulting and boast about it. But if you are passionate, you would just be very happy about doing what you're doing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shubhecha. As a teacher, I have a question for you because I think I have much to learn. This, we can also relate to whatever, your degree, your domain. So I have a question. May I ask a question to
Yes.
you? Okay. Okay. So the virtual teaching learning platform gives opportunities for a lot of innovation in the use of pedagogical strategies, right? So what changes do you think are needed in the curriculum in order to attain sustainable learning outcomes as well as make learning joyous in the online platform? So what changes do you suggest there should be? The curriculum also needs to change, isn't it? Needs to be updated. Okay. So what do you think? What changes should be there in the curriculum?
I think, Miss, at least having been a part of that whole curriculum, and I don't think much has changed in terms of curriculum from what we have studied. So I think one is that a lot of new things are not there in the curriculum, like the newer changes that are happening in and around us. And it's more, I still feel, and I that's the limitation that we have, is that our class sizes are also so big that a lot of hands-on activities are not there in our curriculum. And I feel that the whole idea of learning by doing, like, as I said, that creating something, it could be anything, like a tangible thing or something that you create to help you learn better, is something that our curriculum does not focus on. Our curriculum is more like, it expects you to understand the human body by just showing pictures, or maximum you can just go and see a YouTube video. But literally we had one of our professors talk about how one teacher in a school, in an elementary school, she literally wore a body suit of the inside of your body, of how the back looks like, how the front looks like, and that's become very viral over here now. But so things like that, where students are able to imagine what they are studying or see what they are studying. It's not possible to always see what they are studying, but to have a curriculum, for example, if I talk physics or if I talk bio, whatever, and I'm being told, oh, this is velocity and this is how a turbine works, this is how a generator works, but I literally have no clue as to what every part is. But rather, if I am given a little model to work on or a little motor to work on, my fear of trying to understand these things also goes away, And also, I am very proud of having created something. And while I'm creating, I'm actually learning the whole process. So then I don't have to memorize. That whole process of rote learning goes away. And it's more like I can explain what I'm doing, because nobody can explain better than yourself what you do. So you don't need to fall back on anything, but just explain. And that's something I think teachers always keep telling us: write in your own words, write in your own words. It just becomes so much more easy to write in our own words when we do it ourselves, because we have a story to say. So I think it's more about learning by doing, which is a limitation of our curriculum. And I think we as the next generation have to like try and bring that change.
Yes, we have started. CBSE is emphasizing on experiential learning or learning by doing. Yes, it has started, but yes, it is progressing in baby steps. Much has to be done in that field, definitely. Thank you so much, Shubhecha. Okay, any more questions? Any more? Anybody would like to ask any more questions?
No, I think she has covered everything. And thank you, Shubhecha. It was really a learning experience for us today. We have learned so much from you and could correlate with what you were saying, because national education policy is also talking about these things. But I think there's a long way to go before we implement everything in our education system. It will take some more years. But India also, the education system is undergoing a great change.
Definitely, definitely. But we also have to think about breaching the social divide, because there are many children who do not have any access to gadgets. So that also is very much needed. Okay. Thank you so much, Shubhecha. Now over to Shosika for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. It was such a great pleasure having you with us, Shubhecha, ma'am. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and for making this session. This was such an amazing and enlightening session for us, with you sharing your advice and guiding us through your experiences. Many of us are still unsure about the path we want to follow, the career we want to pursue, but we have that constant fear that whatever we choose right now might be it, and there is no scope of switching to a new road when you have already traversed midway down it. Thank you for showing us that it's okay to take the road not taken, while at the same time making us aware of the various ups and downs that we may face while doing so, and for answering our innumerable doubts in such a genial manner with so much care and patience, which really boosted our confidence. I would like to extend my gratitude to our principal, ma'am, Ms. Shaha, our vice principal, ma'am, Ms. Ghosh, our coordinators and our teachers for making this possible. I thank the school's technical team for being the backbone to this virtual platform of learning and ensuring the smooth functioning of the entire event. A massive thank you to Shubhecha ma'am once again, and we hope it was as much fun for you to come back to MBWA and conduct such an engaging session as it was for us to attend it. Lastly, thank you to everyone for joining us today and making this session so lively and interactive. Thank you.